I think Islam hates us.
They have done nothing except wreak havoc and terror for our faith and our religion.
When we stand up to those who oppress our communities, that Allah accepts from us that as a form of jihad.
Foundations of society are fragile. We must be the shepherds of our own civilization.
Anyone answers either yes or no without making necessary distinctions, both are not telling the truth. They're lying.
Father, we pray that your word will become a hammer that breaks rocks into pieces. That you will raise up in this nation pulpits and prophets that will call the nation back to repentance.
Will you distance yourself from those who think differently, or will you join us at the table and talk about what is really important? This is the Al-Ma'idah Initiative, conversation without compromise.
I'm Jawad Khaki. I'm one of the founding directors of the Ithna Ashura Muslim Association of the Northwest, also called this Iman. And I'm the president of the organization and one of the board members and a volunteer.
That's great. So how long have you been living in Seattle now?
Over 30 years, believe it or not. I arrived here on May 31st, 1989.
Gosh, I'm 30 now.
Looks like about the time you were born, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I was born in December 89.
Okay, so I came here about 7 months before you got here.
And how many kids do you have?
I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren.
Congratulations. How old are your grandkids?
My grandkids, one is 4, another one is going to be 2 in October, and then the youngest one is going to be 9 months end of this month.
Congratulations. I'm actually really looking forward to the grandparent phase because it's all the fun parts about being a parent with generally less of the work.
Yeah, well, think about it this way. Your children are your capital assets, and your grandchildren are your dividends. Interest.
That's right. And where are you from originally?
I was born in Tanzania.
Okay.
Yeah, and in Africa, but I've lived all over the world. Prior to the United States, I was actually in the UK.
And from what I understand, you're about 20 miles away from where I grew up.
That's correct. I've lived in different parts of the UK. Before I came to the United States, I was living in Bletchley, and you were in Northampton, I guess. So it would be about 20 miles, correct?
Yeah, I don't know what Milton Keynes was like when you lived there, but now it's the most American feeling part of England that I can think of.
Even in those days, people liked to go to Milton Keynes because it was wide and open. We did actually have concrete cows. I don't know if they still have them.
They still have the concrete cows.
Right. And it was a good ride. From Milton Keynes to London, it was only about like a 30-40 minute train ride. I used to work in Dunstable. So for me, it was quite convenient to live in Milton Keynes. I like the open spaces, new construction, easy access to London. Also, if you want to go up to the Midlands, it was not too far. Easy to get on the highway there.
So what were you doing for your career back then?
I was working on mini computers, believe it or not. I used to work for a company called GSC Computers Limited. They were based in Bournemouth, but our development center was in Dunstable. So, living in Bletchley, working in Dunstable was quite convenient. I could avoid a lot of the traffic and enjoy that.
Then, are you still connected to that work in any way?
I was in the IT field and still consider myself a software engineer. I came to the United States, worked for AT&T Bell Labs on the East Coast for 4 years before moving out here, and where I worked for Microsoft for 20 years. I was one of the executives at Microsoft working on Windows. So if you actually use Windows, like I saw what you were using there, we had something to do with it. My mission was to get people connected.
Yeah, well, I would have used. I've been enjoying it. I was Mac for a while, but then I wanted to buy a modern laptop that didn't send me into thousands of dollars of debt.
Well, I think Windows is a good value for money, and I think I know the people working behind Windows are great people working on it, and it's a good product.
Yeah, it's a company town. Everyone seems to have worked for Microsoft or Amazon at some point. Looks
that way. Seattle has gone through a lot of changes in the last 30 years, right? When I came over here, we had a vision to see a computer on every desk. It looks like we got a computer in every pocket now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Everything's changed. So I'm actually really interested in. This is the first time I've ever been inside a Shia mosque, because what I've been interested in sort of interacting with the Muslim world since I was about 19. Well, younger than that, but none of my interactions were especially good before then, because Have you ever been to Speaker's Corner in London?
Sure, Hyde Park.
Yeah. So there you have a bunch of religious and political leaders yelling at each other. And it's really interesting and it's good sport, but it's not very productive. So my only real interaction with people, not who were Muslim, but who were actually talking about being Muslim, were just people yelling at other people on soapboxes. And again, it's good sport. Everyone's doing it. Nothing against them. But that was really my introduction until in 2009, I read the Quran for the first time. And then I made a friend from Bangladesh and we had a lot of conversations about it. But I didn't really feel like I understood her because obviously when you read the Quran, there's not very much narrative about Muhammad himself. And so much of the life of the average Muslim is trying to imitate the life of Muhammad to some capacity. And I was wondering where all that was coming from. So I went through all of Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim on audio. And the first person I had a meaningful conversation about that, who was a Shia who doesn't believe in the reliability of those texts. I was like, oh, why did I read all this? So I'm always fascinated in the source materials and how that all plays in. So for you, tell me about, did you grow up in a Shia household? How did you kind of come to learn about everything?
Yeah, I grew up in a Muslim family, and I grew up practicing faith pretty much in the remote parts of Tanzania. I was born in Songea, a small town in the southern portion of Tanzania. And, my daily routine was going to school, going to the mosque, playing with my Hindu friends and, Christian friends and, friends who did not have me. I think one of the great upbringing I had in Tanzania was that we were in a very multi-faith, diverse society. We were taught to appreciate different faiths and respect different faiths and to learn. For example, I remember my first Catholic Mass in 1967. My sister was delivering her first baby, my first nephew, and we used to take turns to go to Peramio and be with her and support her in her pregnancy. And I remember there was the time of Easter, so there I was in the Catholic Mass, listening to a Catholic priest and doing a very interesting kind of sermon. So we grew up in a very diverse society whereby we learned to appreciate different faith perspectives, and I learned very early age in my life that different faiths teach us to be good human beings, to serve to worship God and serve mankind. That's the essence of most faiths, to love your neighbor the way you want to be loved. So
were you serious about your faith as long as you can remember, or was there a turning point for you where it became?
It's interesting. I mean, I think that when you grow up in a Muslim household, you take faith for granted, right? You don't really kind of, question things or whatever. And I would say that my journey of faith, or understanding my faith, and really started as I migrated to the West. First it was England and then to America. Let me give you one story here. There's a friend of mine, his name was Robert, right? And he asks me one day, Jawad, what about the Quran? Have you read it? I said, yeah, I've read it. So, what do you understand what it says? I said, well, I can read in Arabic, but I don't know what it says. He says, Jawad, how can you be true to yourself? You say you're a Muslim, you're practicing, and you read the Quran, but you've never made an effort to study it. You see, there interactions like this, inspired me to actually learn more about my faith. But of course, you come across different ideas and different thoughts, right? And people challenge what your beliefs are, and then you actually say, okay, you dig down deeper and go to the essence. You mentioned about the Quran. See, Quran, unlike other texts, there's no narratives, extensive narrative. There are some narratives, for example, the story of Joseph and so forth, right? But it is really a book of more principles. What is right and what is not so okay, right? I mean, it is a guideline for people to actually, determine what they should be doing and what they should be avoiding, right? And I think that's the thing. And Quranic studies, is more than a lifetime's work. There are scholars who actually spent 70, 80 years and they are still students of the Quran. So, coming to the West was good because it inspired me to reflect on how my faith is relevant to our present day life. When you grow up in any faith, there are rituals. Rituals are very important, right? They actually help you develop a sense of community and everything. But rituals must have relevance to our daily lives, right? Because rituals with no relevance, I find shallow. And that's really what actually happened to me in my migration to the West. I said, okay, how is this ritual relevant to my daily life?
Yeah, I think I remember that happening with me actually, where when we always prayed for dinner and said thank you to God for our food, but I don't think I ever really meant it or thought about it until I'd moved out of the country, moved out of home, and actually there was some doubt of whether I'd be eating that day, because of anything other than ramen, or even the ramen, and you're thankful for it because you actually have to survive, and you just pay more attention to providence at that point.
Sure, indeed, yeah.
So when you were challenged, and where did you start studying?
I've studied all my life, right? When I was in Tanzania, for example, we were one other thing that I really appreciated, in addition to being exposed to diversity, was our teachers. And our teachers were just our peer group, right? The older kids will teach the younger kids. And that's the best way I found learning. And we were always encouraged to question what we were told, right? Never to take anything for granted, to actually, so this is obviously there was some kind of indoctrination going on all the time, all the faiths do, but at the same time, we were encouraged that don't really take something for granted, make sure that it makes sense to you. So that kind of foundation gives you confidence, right, in later years in your life. That when somebody comes and say, hey, why do you do that? For example, Robert asking me, well, they say, why Quran? I read it, but I've never kind of really taken time to seriously study it, right? So it invokes you, and there are many other incidents like this, right? Why do we do certain practices, right? And there's always rituals evolve with the conditions of the time, right? Right now, for example, there's a big ritual every year that takes place, the Hajj, the pilgrimage, right? Are we Muslims realizing the full potential of the ritual? I don't know. Could we be doing more? Definitely, right? Because there's a sea of humanity that flows into Mecca, right? People from all over the world, white, brown, yellow, black, all these people are one place, and they are all worshiping one God, right? But yet, many will go there and come back without knowing any other part of the world. It's the greatest conference that takes place every year. Are we really kind of doing enough to spread peace and justice around the world? But clearly, given all the strife that's going on, we are not succeeding in realizing the full potential. At the time when you wear the two white pieces of cloth of ihram, you say, okay, you are cannot do any of the things that are legal for you. For example, not even kind of scratching your skin so that you injure an insect. Teaches you non-violence, right? But yet again, after we finish Hajj, do we actually continue, keep remembering all these things? So those rituals, it's a ritual. Hajj is a ritual, but is it relevant to how we exist in our daily life?
So speaking of rituals, we're in the middle of Ashura right now, and so I want to hear the story behind Ashura, but maybe start with who Ali is.
Yeah, the story of Islam, Muslims believe that Islam is the eternal truth revealed to mankind through prophets that came over time, and the last prophet was Prophet Muhammad. So the mission of Prophet Muhammad is very much intertwined with the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So who was Ali? Ali was the cousin and son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, Ali ibn Abi Talib. His father's name was Abu Talib, Prophet's father's name was Abdullah. So they were cousins, and he was younger than the Prophet. Right from the very earliest days, Ali was brought up under the mentorship of Prophet Muhammad. He and Prophet Muhammad were very close together. So when Prophet Muhammad's missions began at the age of 40, right, and he comes and announces to the community that, look, there is no God except God, and I am being chosen as a prophet of God. Who is willing to believe me? Ali was the first male who actually accepted the mission, the message of Islam as revealed to Prophet Muhammad. So Ali's relationship, and Ali was still a minor. So we believe that Ali was really pretty much grew up under the message of Prophet Muhammad. And now obviously when Prophet Muhammad comes in, challenges the status quo of Arabia, a cruel society where people worship power and wealth, right? Racism, and they were brutal to women and so forth, right? And Prophet Muhammad questioned all this unjust and corrupt practices. It was not easy because she was threatening the status quo. So they endured many struggles together, whether it was in Mecca or after his migration from Mecca to Medina, right? In fact, when he migrated from Mecca to Medina, when Prophet Muhammad was threatened that his life would be under threat and people were going to kill him, it was Ali who actually is left behind to sleep in Prophet's bed, and Prophet goes. I mean, it shows the faith that Ali had in God and the confidence he had in Prophet Muhammad. That if Prophet Muhammad's life is saved and he's telling you'll be saved, he is willing to take the bed. How many of us will be willing to take the bed of Prophet Muhammad, knowing that somebody's going to come and attack us? But Ali actually had the most soundest sleep that night when the Prophet actually migrated from Mecca to Medina. And Imam Ali's companionship with the Prophet continues. In many struggles they went, whether it was the battle of Badr or the battle of Ahad, the battle of the Khandaq. He was always there. He was chosen he was always there to defend the honor of Islam. He was chosen many times to deliver the messages on behalf of the Prophet. So he was a very much integral part of the mission of Islam, right from inception. And so what happens is that really in the last pilgrimage, the Prophet Muhammad only did one pilgrimage. It was the first and last pilgrimage. After the last pilgrimage, by the way, let me respect. When Imam Ali declares that I am willing to accept Islam, the Prophet Muhammad says something very interesting. It's like, my relationship with Ali is like of Moses to Aaron, except there's no prophet after me, right? So this is like right from early days. In the last pilgrimage after the Mecca, there's a place called Ghadir al-Khum. In that location, before the pilgrims departed to different parts of Arabia, the Prophet convinced everybody, and he declares that whoever's master I am, Ali is also his master. Man kuntu mawla fahada Ali mawla. Now, obviously, this is really a key point because in the Shia belief, we believe that the guides that followed the Prophet Muhammad were also divinely appointed, Ali being the first guide. Our Sunni brothers have a different view of that history, although that happened. So this is really a theological difference, right? We believe in divinely appointed guides, and our Sunni brothers do not believe. But yet, both Sunnis and Shias revere the character of Ali alayhi salam. I mean, he is considered one of the four rightly guided caliphs. Who was, who actually governed the Muslims, for 5 years before he passed away, and Sunni Muslims as well as Shia Muslims revere and look up Ali with the highest of the possible ways. He was one of the strongest, most generous, bravest, courageous persons, very devoted, very committed to the Prophet and the mission of Islam.
So before we move on to the exact sort of nature of what happened there. Is there right now? I'm reading through Al-Tabari's history, which it seems to be very balanced, actually, between the sort of Sunni and Shia perspectives. Is there any sort of go-to history or work that you consider reliable that you like to go to for life of Ali?
I think one of the best ways to learn about Ali and to understand his character would be the Nahj al-Balagha. These are the collections of sermons and letters and writings that he himself did that were compiled by some scholars who followed. That's a good text. Is a secondary text. I think they'll be good. In fact, here at the Iman Center on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, there's a group of people convene and they're doing the reading thing. If you're interested, you're welcome to join us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What time?
I think it's 7:00 in the evening right now, 7 to 8 o'clock, and that'd be great. I mean, if you can come, and because they go through the reading, and there's a bunch of people, like you said, working at Amazon, working at Microsoft, working at Google, they come together, they say, okay, well, let's actually try to make something out of it. And I've not had a chance to attend yet because I've been other things, but I've heard very good things about it. So that, I would say, Nahj al-Balagha is a very good text to understand Imam Ali alayhi salam.
So
when I say alayhi salam, peace be upon him.
Yes. So the days after Muhammad's death, there's a lot of mourning, there's a lot of chaos, and then you have the you have the meeting of the tribal elders of Medina, which is sort of crashed by Abu Bakr and Omar, which ends with Abu Bakr being proclaimed the Khalifa by Omar. And from what I understand, according to some accounts, Omar then goes over to Ali's house, threatens to burn the house down unless Ali swears allegiance to Abu Bakr. And then eventually that happens. Or is that... Does he eventually swear allegiance to Abu Bakr?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that, look, here's what happened after the death of the Prophet, right? I mean, Imam Ali was busy with the burial rites of the Prophet because clearly, it was mourning bereavement in his household, right? There's a household of his daughter's father and his brother and his father-in-law passed away, and he grew up under the shadows of the Prophet throughout his life. So it's a big loss to Ali alayhi salam and to all the Muslim community. So he was busy in the preparations of the burial. Obviously, the Muslim community were busy in trying to figure out, what happens. Now, obviously, the Prophet, even on deathbed, did actually say, okay, give me something to write on. And he was not given that benefit. So he, and we don't know what he would have said. But we believe, the Shia Muslims believe that he would have actually been very clear about how his successorship should have. He already declared it Ghadir Qawm. He will actually. It remains to be seen what he would have said. I don't know. We can't judge that. But the point was this. So while they were busy, there was a shura, and they decided to elect Abu Bakr as the government. And there was something. There was I'm sure that must be a setback to many of the people who were witnessed the events at Ghadir Qawm on the Prophet's last miracle, because it's contrary to what the Prophet had said. Whoever is I'm master, Ali should be his master. Man kuntum mawla fahada aliyun mawla. And people congratulated him. Even the people who actually assumed the leadership of the Muslims, they congratulated him. And in history books that really, people may have different interpretations of this, what the term of Mawla means. There's a couple of things that took place. One was basically they wanted to actually have make sure that there's no opposition or some rebellion from Ali, right? The other part was really one inheritance. Right, I mean, when people pass away, Bibi Fatima, Prophet's daughter, who actually was with him every step of the way, right, from the struggle, when people used to throw the internal intestines of sheep on Prophet when he was calling people, she was there cleaning after him, taking care of him, nursing him, because Prophet's mother died. So Fatima was the mother of her father, if you think about it, right? She was deprived of the inheritance of the Prophet, and this inheritance, was really the source of income for her, right? And the history books are there to say what happened to her and how she was treated after her father's mission, life for Muslims, and how she dealt with these things. So it was a great sadness, and even if I speak right now, it's very hard for me to withhold my emotion when I think about what she had to endure. And shortly after a few months, Fatima passes away. But Imam Ali was always, even though things didn't really go the way he would have liked to have gone, Prophet Ali gone, he was actually committed to the mission of Islam and Muslims. And for 25 years, right, he actually worked without any, hesitation, guiding the caliphs to make sure they do good decisions. In fact, Umar is on record. Second Caliph Umar, Azad Umar is a record saying, look, if it wasn't for Ali, I would have collapsed. I mean, I would have been perished. He guided him for many of the big mistakes he would have made. So Ali was there, very much well respected, and he never coveted the leadership of the world. He was not after material power, as you might see people jockeying for power or whatever. The Khilafat was thrust upon him when there wasn't any other person who the Muslim community felt they could actually provide leadership to the community.
Right, because it was a crazy time. You'd had Abu Bakr died naturally. Omar was assassinated by Persians, right, disgruntled Persians, whereas Uthman was actually assassinated from people within the community. So more than ever, there was need for strong leadership, and Ali was the only one who could take it the mantle.
Yeah, and I think we've got to be very careful. Omar was assaulted by Persians, right? I mean, that's really the best way to say that Omar was assassinated by a criminal.
Fair enough.
Right? I mean, I think that kind of narrative, it invokes hatred for a particular group of people, right? And, I'm sure there are many Persians who have come and will come who are beautiful people, and not all of them are things. And that narrative we need to stay away from. We know that somebody who commits a crime is a criminal, and that's the only thing he does, and he doesn't represent a group of people. And yes, I think that Uthman was also killed because there was a unhappiness in the Muslim community. They saw that there was a little bit of nepotism setting in, and there was a appointment of governorships and so forth. They were not really they were not happy with. And I think that when there was such chaos, it was really at that point the Muslim community came to Imam Ali alayhi salam and said, "Please accept this responsibility," and he actually rose to accept the responsibility.
So for 4 years, you've got rightly guided caliph according to the Sunnis and the true successor according to the Shias. One place, everything's good for 4 years.
And he achieved a lot. And look at it. I mean, his Imam Ali's words are really living with us even till this day. If you go to the United Nations, the advice he provides to the Malika Ashtar, the governor of Egypt, says, look, when you go to Egypt, you'll find two kinds of people. You'll find those people who share your faith and those people who actually share your humanity. They are your brothers in creation or your brothers in faith. You treat them both justly. These kind of big ideas that you'll find in Najul Baghdad and other places, in fact, inscribed in the United Nations things, this is really what the legacy Imam Ali left behind for us. Unfortunately, there were people, the sad thing is that there were mischief in the Muslim community had already set in. So he was challenged by people like Muawiyah, right? And there was battles, and it was a 5 years of difficult governance of the Muslim community. But he prevailed, and he brought a lot of things that we still cherish to this day.
And it's a really heartbreaking time, right? Because you have Ali, and then Lady Aisha stages a battle against him, and she's obviously treated graciously afterwards, but it's a difficult time.
Well, I mean, I think human beings are not immune to misguidance, right? I mean, I think there's a whole story of Talha and Zubair. We don't have enough time to go through all the history right now, but I'm seeing there's a lot of things we can learn. I think when we focus on the material existence rather than the spiritual, right, then things can really get crazy. But anyway, you can see that the Prophet Imam Ali treats Aisha with the utmost respect and dignity, right? And he makes sure that she's guided and escorted, and this peace is brought. And I think he continues on his mission.
So I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about it that way in a sort of humanity sense, because often what I hear when people talk about the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, is people are going to just have this very idealistic idea of what life is like back then. And honestly, I think there's, even as someone who ultimately believes differently, I think there's things you can learn from all of history. But I think in some ways that you're missing out on some of the most interesting and helpful things. If you see people surrounded by real humanity rather than this, imagined utopia, I think it's more helpful for people.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all human beings, right? I mean, so I think that there's always temptation, right? And Satan is there to tempt us. And our faith is to seek closest to God and not be tempted, right? And we do believe that Imam Ali's character was one of that nature, that he was, is immune from worldly attractions, right? And we can see this borne out not only in Ali, also as in children who succeeded him. They never coveted power. They were all about serving the community. And when the issue was about power and serving the community, they opted to serve the community, right? They abhorred power. They were only there to serve if people so wanted.
So in that role, as wanting to be a servant leader, describe to me how that all comes crashing down.
Well, I think after Imam Ali, Imam Hassan succeeded him, and there's a battle between the struggle between Muawiyah and Imam Hassan, and Imam Hassan saw that look, he comes to the conclusion that the people who were really out there, the strife going on was really more like about material power or tribalism or whatever, and he said, look, there's no point pursuing this conflict, and he makes peace with Muawiyah. Right, under the peace of Muawiyah, was a clear understanding that Muawiyah will not really select somebody to designate him. Muslim community will appoint, but instead Muawiyah, when he dies, he appoints Yazid, his son, to come to the caliphate, and Yazid actually, and obviously Muawiyah, Imam Hassan himself was poisoned by his wife. There's another story about that, but I mean, I focus on the Yazid.
So just for the listeners, Muawiyah is the 5th Khalifa.
Well,
right,
I mean, he usurped the Khilafat, right? And we don't, there's no unanimous consensus.
Sure.
I mean, the only the four rightly guided caliphs is that what Muslims say, and of course, Shia Muslims will say the rightful position was for Imam Ali to be the first Khalifa. Although history says he did not really get that opportunity, he got opportunity 25 years later. But when Yazid comes in, Yazid always Yazid had many corrupt, ways, and he had unjust approaches, and he was all about again material control and so forth, and he always perceived threat from the family of the Prophet, and Imam Hussein, the son of Imam Ali, was the person of the time. So he actually, in his scheme, he says, okay, I'm going to seek pledge of allegiance from Hussein. So he sends his people in Medina. They summon him to a meeting place, and they ask him to give his allegiance, bay'ah. And Imam Hussein said, look, I'm not going to pledge allegiance to somebody who's corrupt. And if you think that that's really not acceptable, then I'm going to move out of Medina, avoid conflict. And he goes to Mecca. When he goes to Mecca, he learns that there was a plot out there to assassinate him. Now, at the same time, people in Kufa, right, and what is present-day Iraq, right, they were really looking for somebody to come and guide them, lead them. So they wrote letters, thousands of letters, to come, and we need a leader. So Imam Hussein said, well, okay, here the people don't want me in Medina. They're going to assassinate me in Mecca. I'm going to head to Kufa.
And was Kufa Ali's capital?
That's right. Imam Ali is, he actually has Khilafat in Kufa. So Imam Hussein actually sends his cousin, Muslim Aqil, to Kufa to actually survey the land, the situation there, and to see if how things were going. And thousands of people came and welcomed him, and in the mosque of Kufa, they prayed behind him and so forth, right? And this news goes to Yazid that, hey, this is going on. So at that point, Yazid then sends his people and schemes things, and he brutally has Muslim ibn Aqil assassinated, right? Now, Muslim has sent message to Imam Hussein, come here to Kufa, people are waiting for you. And he was desperate to get the message out that, look, don't come, because the things in Kufa have turned after I sent the message. At that point, Imam Hussein was already on his way to Kufa, and he didn't get the message in time. He gets the message that a Muslim has been assassinated on the way to Kufa. And as he was going over there, he gets actually diverted to another route, and then eventually gets stopped at Karbala, right? And it was really in the month of Muharram, right, that these people, it was really, first of all, the Hur was the guy who actually stops him. And then, a very interesting story about Hur, I'll tell you later on. But then he's refused to go. He said, look, I'll go back. But he's refused to go, and he's prevented to go to Kufa. And he's actually refused to turn back. He was stationed there. And I think the commanders of Yazid then got the message, massacre his lot. And Imam Hussein, gave freedom to all the people he had. Look, don't stay with me, because my fate is uncertain, and it could be very serious. But if you need to leave, go. But the 72 of his companions stay with him, and his family stay with him. And on the 7th of Muharram, right, this cut of the water. Now, when Hur stops Imam Hussein's army, the army of Hur was really thirsty. And the Imam Hussein satiates them with water to the point whereby people were so thirsty they didn't know how to handle it. But Imam Hussein does all this stuff. And it's ironically that on the 7th day of Muharram, the same people who were actually given water, they cut off the water supply to Imam Hussein and his families and his companions. Right, on the 10th day of Muharram, massacre happens. Now, obviously, the night of Ashura, Hur, the commander was stopped. He realized what he had done. He says, well, this is a big mistake I made. I mean, I should not have stopped. So he actually goes there to Imam Hussein and says, look, please, I'm sorry for what happened. Accept me as one of your companions, And Imam Hussein says, you are free. You truly are born free. Hur means freedom, and you truly are free because you're living your conscience. And Hur turns out to be one of the first martyrs of Karbala, right? Although that says that, basically in Islam, in the true Islam, there's never a hatred. In the case, I would say that, for example, if you look at it, Hur was the guy we could blame, saying you are the person who actually stopped Hussein's force, right? And if Imam Hussein had any kind of hatred for people, how can he accept Hur, who was the person who actually caused these things? But he said, no, you did it, you didn't know better, you're free. And he accepts him and really appreciates Hur's support. So, on the day of Ashura, it was really a sad day. I mean, on the night of Ashura, again, Imam Hussein, by the way, when Imam Hussein leaves Medina, and his message was, look, my mission, my movement is about reforming the nation of my grandfather, to bring them to enjoin what is good and to forbid what's evil. Amr bil ma'ruf means to encourage people to do good, to forbid evil. If you think about it, right? I mean, the Yazid's army were the ISIS of the present time, right? Compared to that, they were the kind of things. So, on the 9th of Muharram again, they engaged in a whole night of worship because they knew that the next morning was going to be a very difficult day for them. And the day starts with I'm sorry. The day starts with the call to prayer by prophets, Imam Hussein's son, Ali Akbar. And people pray in the morning. And I think that battle starts and, people, even in the state of battle, they don't give up the prayer. When they were praying, for example, people would stand in front and people would pray. Imam Hussein was telling that this is not about power. This is about freedom to worship God. That's what it's all about. And when you look at you see, the tragedy of Karbala is a very difficult tragedy for any believer of the Prophet to bear. So whenever we recall this thing, it's very difficult for us. So we see in that day, Imam Hussein sacrifices all his family, his children, his companions, his brothers, right? His nephews and nieces, and there's nothing left for them. And in the afternoon, he's alone on the battlefield, and the Yazid's army decapitate him and kill him. Then they set fire to the tents of Imam Hussein. They loot, they plunder the Prophet of Islam and his family. This is a great tragedy, and this is what Ashura is about. So the reason we commemorate, first of all, is to remember the great sacrifice of the Prophet Muhammad and his family. And the second is to never let that quest for freedom and justice die in our hearts, right? You see, when there was this battle of Karbala that took place, and when they saw the decapitated bodies of the family of the Prophet, Imam Hussein's son, Zain al-Abidin, who was sick, who didn't really go to battle, he actually was depressed. And he's looking at all this carnage, and it was very depressed. So Bibi Zainab, who was a sister of Imam Hussein, said, look, don't look at this. I see nothing but beauty. I mean, she was a person of vision. She knew that the great tragedy that took place, right, will continue to attract believers many years from now. Even if you're not a Muslim, you will see the experience of Karbala, and there will not be, your conscience will connect with that. You will not be able to stop tears for that. And the thing is that you will never accept injustice, and you will always fight for freedom. which really is the mission of the Prophet. Because Prophet says, Husseinu minni wa ana min Hussein. I am from Hussein, and Hussein is from me. Now, obviously, we know that Hussein was from the Prophet, who's his grandson. But why is it that I am from Hussein? It was really up to Imam Hussein and his family to revive the message of the Prophet. So it reaches to us today, 14 centuries later. Right? And in that sacrifice, I mean, even for example, the brutality of the people can be understood. There was a 6-month-old baby. The Prophet said, Imam Hussein takes him prior to his own assassination. When he goes there, he said, look, if you don't trust me, right, I just want water. If you don't trust me, that I'm going to use the water for myself, I'm going to leave the baby here. You can satiate the baby. And instead, actually, they throw arrows and they martyr the baby, 6-month-old baby. Right? It's a great tragedy. And I think there'll be a lot of understanding among the Muslims if we understood the tragedy of Karbala. Right? Unfortunately, rather than actually understanding the history, right, and trying to create this sectarianism division, right, we are, rather than doing that kind of things, we should really go back to the sources, say what actually happened, why did it happen, what was the principle at play here, and how does it apply to us today? I mean, today, for example, we'd say, look, we have all this crisis of refugees everywhere, right? Why are they leaving? They are leaving because they are being oppressed, harassed, right? And the history of refugees is the history of our prophets, the history of our families of Prophet, of the Imams, right? We must actually do something to actually respect people and respect sanctity of life and give refuge to people. So Ashura is a very emotional time, right? And by the way, Ashura the tragedy of Ashura doesn't stop there, because you see, the trials and tribulation of Ashura continue beyond Ashura, right? The family of the Prophet, after they were plundered and all the tents were set on fire that night. Imagine this. I mean, the little kids running around on the night of Ashura, where their fathers and their uncles and their grandfather, they're all decapitated, laying there. This horrendous evil forces come in and set light to tents, rob them of the things, right? They go through that night, they survive that night, and then they are journeyed to Kufa, and then from Kufa to Damascus, right, as prisoners. Imagine like how Zainab felt. One day her father was a Khalif of the Muslims, and now she's paraded into Kufa as a criminal, as a slave. It must be very, very difficult, right? And they go into and then imagine the decapitated heads of this family of the Prophet being brought there, and people disrespecting that, right? How it's inhumane in our present times, but in that time, to show that this is your father, his head is being displayed, and you what you witness it, or your brother. This is the cruelty that Muslims have actually inflicted upon themselves. History. I'm sorry, I got a little emotional here.
No need to apologize. It's very interesting, because talking about this, I think there is something missing in a lot of these countries that are oppressive right now, which have very strong centralized governments and dictatorships. I think this side of the coin of suffering and this idea is missing, because if you have an idea that greatness is only conquest, dominion, and ruling, then people don't have a concept of how to serve well. They don't have a concept of how to sacrifice well. And this idea of self-sacrifice is something that I really don't think you can reform a nation without having that.
Yeah, I think this is what I'm saying, that we have a great reverence to the family of the Prophet, right, for the great sacrifice they made, and we know every step of the way. All the Imams that came in, they never coveted any power, right? This temporal leadership is not really what it's all about. I mean, I think we need to really build a great future, right, in the hereafter, right, and that comes through a life of service. When people came, I mean, imagine. Let me kind of take you to the year 622 AD. Okay, imagine that you are in that year, and you show up in Medina, right? And you see people from the Byzantine Empire show up in Medina. The people from the Persian Empire show up in Medina. People from the Abyssinian Empire, they show up in Medina. Why? What do they see? There's no architecture there. There's no building. There's no science. There's no technology, right? Yet they flocked to Medina, right? And the message of the Prophet was what? La ilaha illallah. There is no God except God, right? And don't mistake Muhammadan Rasulullah. I am not Abduhu Rasul. I'm the servant and the messenger of God. So don't elevate my status to beyond what I am. I'm just a chosen servant and messenger. But there's no God except God. And people are asking, what is Islam? Islam is nothing but worship of God and service to mankind, right? And in the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam, for example, we see that they treat all of humanity, whether those people who believed like Imam Ali believed or he did not believe like that. He said, treat all equally. This is a story of somebody in the community, Imam Islam. He was old and poor. And he asked him, what's going on? This person, he was not a Muslim, some say he's a Jewish person or whatever. He said, look, how you took advantage of this person, right? You took the advantage of the youth of this person. Now you left him completely uncared for. This is not Islam. He immediately orders that from the treasury, people should be taking care of that. It's all about justice. I mean, today, our message, how we're learning from Prophet Muhammad and his family and the Imams is that we take care of all of humanity without any discrimination, without any distinction. Either they share with us in our faith or they share with us in the creation. They're all beloved to Allah. We are not to judge, right? Judgment is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We just actually have to learn, be inspired by great people and great things that God has created. We were discussing earlier, right? Today, for example, the importance of the Quran. The best sermon for me to give was from my friend Robert, right? Say, hey, Jawad, you've not learned the Quran. So, guidance is going to come from God, right? In whatever way we need to actually be ready for the reception.
So I think it's actually really interesting because it sounds like what you're saying actually comes from a very similar place that a lot of Christian beliefs come from. Because what struck me in some ways, but not every way, because obviously there's differences, is the death of Hussein or Hassan? Hussein. The death of Hussein, as you're describing it, sounds remarkably like the Bible's account of the death of Jesus in some ways. That the idea is that the Son of God, the true ruler of God's people, is not recognized by his own people, and he's unjustly tried by corrupt people who don't want to submit to his authority, and then they give him a false trial, and then they put him to death on a cross. Yet there's two men on either side of the cross mocking him, and then partway through, one of them stops and he tells the other guy, what are you doing? We're here because we deserve to be here. He's innocent. And he says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your Father's kingdom. And he says, truly, today you'll be with me in paradise. And then you have the same thing with one of the centurions who's there to kill him, changes his mind partway through as well. And what Jesus said before his death and resurrection was, don't be like the rulers of the Gentiles or nations who lord authority over each other. Whoever wants to become greatest among you must first become your servant. So what's actually interesting and refreshing in some ways is that what you're describing is really greatness through service. It's not greatness through conquest. And it's just a fascinating parallel to me.
It is. I think we achieve greatness through service, through getting used to. Look at the candle. God gives us beautiful metaphors, right? Candle at the end of the day finishes, right? But he gives us light through burning, right? And that's what it is. We have an opportunity to be a candle. We can bring light, right, to others around us. Make somebody smile. Improve somebody's condition, right? And when we do that, we do that. That's the only way we can say thanks. But even when we do that, we still need God's providence to be able to do that, right? How can we thank God? There's no way to thank God, right? The only way to thank God is to to apply ourselves in a way to be God's agents of change.
So on that there's an interesting question there, because that's the kind of divergent point. Christians believe Jesus came back from the dead 3 days later, and then there's this command to go into the nations and taking the message with them. But unfortunately, Hussein.
No, we have a different understanding of the Jesus story.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, we believe that Jesus was not crucified. We believe that somebody else who looked like him was the one who was crucified. He resurrected. He actually is still living with us, right? We believe in Jesus alive with us today, and he will reappear before the end of time. So that's a difference between, and because see, the difference in the theological things, we believe that there's individual accountability of every person, right? I mean, somebody cannot die for your sins. You be held to account for what you've done. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. Whoever has done the atom's weight of good will see it, and whoever has done the atom's weight of evil will see it, right? Nobody else can actually die for me, for my sins, right? And we don't. So there's a difference. But I think I get your point, that I do say that the time of Muharram, Ashura, is akin to the Easter. In the Christian tradition, it's a solemn, time for reflection and so forth, and so that's what we go through right now.
Yes. So obviously, in the Islamic framework of Jesus, you wouldn't have that parallel, but in the biblical account, you do that parallel is there. But I guess the question I'm getting at is, Christians have this, risen Jesus, that you have this premise of, okay, you can kill the truth, but the truth will come back from the dead. So obviously you have the tragedy of Karbala, and then what? Where do you go from there? And how does that? So today, in a crazy world with lots of things wrong with it, what do you even do with that? How does that information move you forward?
So there's a very good question you're asking, right? And now let me offer a couple of thoughts. When Imam Hussein was on the battlefield of Karbala, when all of his companions had given life, including his 6-month-old baby, they were all gone. He says, "Hal min nasir yansura?" Is there anybody out there to help me? He knew there was nobody around there at that point, right? Everybody who could have given life and come to his help had already done it. There was nobody. So that was really the eternal call to all of us. Is there anybody out there to help me? And that call is to justice. Is there anybody out there to uphold justice? Remember, his mission was to reform, right? From corruption, from injustice, from evil to goodness, right? So that's the call that we hear every year. And in the month of Muharram and Ashura, we revive ourselves in this. It's a very important thing. Hal min nasin is an article. I forgot what other thing I was going to say, but hopefully it'll come back to me. So I think the other thing I was going to say was really that it's very important that these rituals, that the Muharram commemorations we have, Ashura commemorations, we need to make it relevant to the injustices that we see in our present time. I mean, for example, today, you see that the millions of Muslims are interned in
China.
In China, right? We see the horrible crisis of refugees down south coming to our borders here. And they are escaping, all kinds of oppression. What's going on, right? We see the Indian state of Kashmir locked up. People can't even report what's going on. We see the conflict in Palestine, right, unresolved after so many decades, right? And we see everyday's hunger and suffering, right? Even in our neighborhoods in Kirkland, Washington here, right? People that don't have enough to have a dignified meal, right? These are the injustices. So when Imam Hussein says, "Hal min nasir yansura?" Is there anybody out there who will listen to my prayer, right? To my call? We need to rise up, because he's saying, look, do what you have to do to restore justice to where there's injustice, and do not be afraid. I was not afraid. Because if you're on the path of truth, even if it comes to giving your life, do not be afraid, but be peaceful, right? Reform, stand your ground, right? Because eventually you will win, right? Just like Zainab said, look, don't be despaired by the carnage you see, but you will win. And today the flag of Hussein is flying, and more people, millions of them, right, are flocking to Iraq. And by the way, I mean, Iraq, for example, is the 14th century has its own history, right? Not Shia Muslims were not even allowed to go to Karbala. Right? It's only after the downfall of Saddam that people can go flock there again freely. So we know, like what you were saying earlier, that that justice will always prevail. That is the nature. That's the principle of God. This is the eternal rule of God, that justice will always prevail. Now, whether we actually accept it or not. Today, for example, if you also actually hold something and drop it, gravity is always going to work, right? And we have faith that gravity works, right? And I think in the same way, we also have to have faith that justice, like Martin Luther King says, that the arc of justice is long, the arc of morality is long, but it bends towards justice. We have to recognize that in our present day circumstances, wherever we see injustice. Today, there's injustices of many kinds. I mean, look, inequitable distribution of wealth. Let me give you an example. For example, on the education side. I'm from Tanzania, right? How many dollars you think a child spends for education? The government spends $70 a year, right, on a child. If you go to India, they spend $120 a year probably on education of a child, right? In Utah, about $6,000. In Washington State, probably $12,000. New York, about $21,000. You can see the inequity, right? And if people, education yet is a fundamental human right, right? Not only that, it's also in our interest to make sure everybody's educated, because those who are not educated, right, they will not be assets and they could be liabilities, right? But so there's injustices like this. We even in our country here, for example, not everybody here has actually prospered, right, the same way. I mean, there's been prosperity on the coast, of the East Coast and the West Coast, but a lot of heartland is suffering, right? That's not right. I'm kind of interested to hear this, pitches by people like Elizabeth Warren, who say that we should have a wealth tax, right? This is an Islamic concept called zakat, because when we give zakat is purification of your wealth. So these are the modern day challenges. My biggest, answering your question is really, how do we make Karbala relevant to our lives? This is the clarion call, right, that we need to listen to. How do we respond to Imam Hussein? Is there anybody out there to help me, right? How do we make it relevant? It doesn't really matter whether you're Muslim or not, whether you're Shia or not. It doesn't really matter, because I think, you want your child, even if he's atheist, to go to school just like I want him to go to school, because he will be an asset to us, or she'll be an asset to us, right? Education opportunity for women, right? Today, if you have $1 to spend on women first before you spend on the men, because a woman will nurture all of us. I'm saying spend it equally on all of them, but do not really put them at a disadvantage. These are the issues of injustice, right? So when Hussein died, he died to keep this sense of quest of justice forever alive in each of us. And to also say, look, nobody has imprisoned you to live justly. The only reason why you don't pursue justice is because you've imprisoned yourself.
Right. So the idea is everybody's free to do the right thing if you're prepared to face the consequences.
Yeah.
So I guess my question on hearing that is, where do you get your definition of justice from? Where are you drawing that from?
Well, justice, is what is injustice? Injustice is whenever when a thing doesn't belong where it is, right? I mean, I think that, look, everybody has a sense of justice. For example, today if I see a little animal here, a dog, or dying of thirst or not having food, right? What does your human instinct tell you? Feed it, right? We actually, in the Western society, will actually take care more of our dogs and cats and pets. And I think we should, because they are creation of God. But we neglect the humanity that is sharing this time of history with us, right? How can we go to bed, for example, at night, knowing that millions are hungry, homeless, right? I mean, look at it, for example, coffee, right? We would go to Starbucks and spend $3-4 for a cappuccino or latte, no problem. And
it's more than that these days.
Okay, and then, we know that the coffee farmer in South America probably got pittance for his effort, right? Now, I don't think you need a rocket scientist to be a rocket scientist or a PhD to figure out that that's not right, right? You are living in a very nice, comfortable home, and they don't have a nice, clean water or air, right? These are the issues. Are we doing things right to protect the environment? right? This is another issue. Are we doing justice to the environment? I mean, it's not justice to people, also justice to the environment. Filling all the oceans with plastics and all these things will not go because we are not really good custodians of Earth, right? These are all the issues. And I think that, look, I mean, it is the principles that we got to quest, but each human society goes through time and will have to define for itself what is right? And we have to have our collective conscience work together, right? I know as a Christian, you as a Christian, and I know me as a Muslim, we are both really we believe in the compassionate God. Right. We believe that God's compassion lives through us, right? We believe in a just God, but we believe that God's justice lives through us, right? And this is what we need to revive. This is why I'm so inspired when you send me the message, let's have a conversation. I say, good, this guy is doing good work. I should sit down with him and talk.
So let's, if we address injustice as a wide front, what do you think, from your worldview, what do you think is the way that happens?
Well, I think as a society, we do not really correctly value all the contributions of everybody, right, in the same way. For example, I'll give you an example. Imagine that you are a mother, a teacher, right? And you actually bring up your child, and the child grows to school. You take care of him 30 years, right? And you started working 30 years ago, right? The child comes out to college, in his 20s or whatever, right? And the day he goes out, gets a job, and he gets $100,000 compensation, right? And you, as a teacher, you probably are making say $50,000, $60,000. You actually gave that child all the opportunities. Does this sound right? Right? And we don't value teachers because they shape our communities, right? So there's an inequity in compensation. I'll give you another example. Today, for example, if you take any big corporation, somebody starts, let's say this guy who starts 100,000, a year. And let's say the CEO of the company maybe gets 100 times more compensation. Now, does it really has 100 times more intelligence, 100 times more hours? Does it kind of make sense, right? To actually have this inequity. And even if you give him 100 times more compensation, he can't probably even use it to live a good life, right? I mean, how many houses, how many cars, how many food you're going to have, right? So you actually far more excess wealth. Now, I'm not saying that don't compensate them high, but I'm saying, give them parameters of what you can say. You will have enough to live happily, and then the extra money you still in your control, but do good in society.
So I guess the key to this is, everyone's going to say you should use your wealth to contribute to society. I guess the question becomes, so they say Jeff Bezos, right? Wealthiest man, or at least he was the wealthiest man in the world. So his goal is to liquidate his fortune and spending about $1 billion a year to basically launch humanity into space, with his goal being to move all heavy production off Earth into outer space so we stop polluting Earth through heavy industry. So obviously no one's making him do that. Do you think society needs to have collective power over individuals, or do you think, or would you just say individuals should choose to use their wealth in a way that's a blessing to others?
Well, I think I'm not in the kind of guy forcing people to do, but I'm saying that, look, clearly on the compensation side, how we compensate people, we need to rethink how we do that, right? Because I don't think it's right that the mother who actually brings up an engineer doesn't make what the engineer makes the first day he goes to work. That doesn't make sense. There should be another way. We need to value that more. I don't know how we do that. That's what we need to apply our minds to it. Okay. And then, by the way, that's just one example. There are many other examples like that. What I'm saying in terms of compensation, rewarding. We should reward people with good talent, right? But we need to enable them. We need to incent them to do good work. So it's look, let's say that you are the guy, okay? You are my CEO. I say, okay, well, we'll give you $1 million. You can live happily with $1 million, and the other 9, you still under your control. But you can only spend them to actually improve our education system, or improve our environment, or do good things in life, whatever that is. But still under your control, right? But you what you can spend on, we want to control. We want to say again, you can only spend on these things. You have a restricted funds, that kind of thing. And yet you have a good life. I mean, you have a very good life. You get still 10 times more than the guy you just hired, right? That's just one aspect of how corporations could rethink how they compensate their people. Because look, if I give you more than X amount of money, you won't be able to use it wisely either. Right? I mean, there's only so much limit. I think at the same time, there are good systems in place to incent people to do things. Like look at Bill and Melinda Gates. I mean, they are doing phenomenal work and taking on challenges that many have put their minds to. Eradication of malaria, fighting AIDS, improving sanitation, pursuing clean energy projects or whatever, right? And these are fantastic things. So I think some of those things are working good, right? Now, in terms of taxation, I think that people like Elizabeth Warren, what they're saying, that there has to be more taxes, from the wealthy. I mean, I think that that's in our collective good interest, because if you do not have, a just society, you will end up with a violent society. We don't want that. That'd be much more expensive to have than to actually, work towards goodness, right? So we need to actually have a serious discussion, right? And I think, going back to our theme of Ashura, right? I mean, I hope that the commemoration of Ashura helps us focus on these kind of injustice issues rather than just lamentation and crying. Yeah, we are sad, right? But that sadness and the emotion that we get, right, should inspire us to improve our society. Because that sadness, if I just leave it at that, right, then I'll really mismanage the blessing of God. That sadness that I feel, right, the energy I get from that, right, tells me I should do something. Okay, I should do something for that. Right? I should not stop at just tears and lamentation. I should go beyond. What is that I can do to improve my condition of my society?
So, in your mind, what is the timeline of that? Because you talk about the arc of history being bent towards justice. So, how in your mind does that happen? Does that come through ordinary, everyday people? Does it come through good governance, or does it come through, the 12th Imam? Well, how does that?
Well, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma bi qawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Means God does not change the condition of a community until the individuals transform themselves. See, the journey of faith is a very personal journey, right? I have to actually dig deep down, right, and find that sense of inner peace and justice in me first, right, and have it somehow go out somehow, right? I mean, even if you look at Hajj, for example, Hajj is a journey of self-discovery. Hajj doesn't end in Hajj. Hajj begins after you come back from Hajj, right? So I think it really comes back. I think one of the big issues we have got really, if you look at the situation of the world right now, you will not disagree with me that, many places messed up, right? Morality, ethics, and spirituality, right? We are void of those things, right? Human progress has always been possible because of the spiritual strength. Human being has been able to do much more than what physically able to do because of the spiritual strength. He believes it can be done. He can imagine it can be done, right? Then there are morality and ethics that we actually see the greater good is not my own personal good. The Quran tells you, be just, even if it's be against your own self or your parents or whatever. Be just. That's what God wants. So if you look at the world situation, what was messed up, I wonder that is Oxbridge, Ivy League, all these seminaries in different religious parts, are they really producing the kind of talent that could help us to a better world? We need to ask this. Somebody actually pressed a button in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He knew there were thousands of millions of people down below who were innocent, who were going to die, right? The morality did not stop the person from pressing the button. And we're having all this random killing going on all the time today. So we really need to think about, how do we restore back the spirituality, morality, ethics, right? And this is really what we have to do. It starts with education, right? And education, so the first point was really we have to change ourselves individually. Our faith helps us do that. Number two is to actually say, okay, can we invest in really institutions of the future education, right? Where we need different kind of skill sets, more equitable, things. So we need those organizations, and then we need to kind of make sure that everybody is going to dignified, opportunity to earn living, right? It's not about us being comfortable here in Kirkland, right? And there are people out in remote parts of America or other parts of the world who don't have the same lifestyle as we can enjoy. And we need to kind of learn about that and have our own commitment to it personally and our moral guidelines, do what is right. You will not be able to force people. I think you have to kind of, you'll have to inspire people. Great movements have always been inspirational. Jesus never did. He never ruled. Right?
No.
Right. He today we have 2 billion Christians who are following him. Prophet Muhammad, right? I mean, he did actually create a community, right? What was unique about Prophet Muhammad, he did come up with the rules and guides, but it was a simple community. Right? The principles are eternal. So those are the things we need to revive in ourselves. The teachings of Jesus, the teachings of Muhammad.
I think that the way a lot of people want to address so from a Christian perspective, when I look out into the world, I see a lot of people wanting to start with the top down, that they think if we just get the right person to lead us, then everything will be fixed. When in reality, the biggest problem in my world is right here.
Exactly, and this is why I like what you're doing, because this kind of discussion, right, with many people, right, is really what we need. I was saying, look, Oxford Ivy League has kind of failed us, right? I mean, we don't have the results we need, right? I mean, you can turn on those your Sunday morning shows, you'll see that all this kind of commentary going on of very intellectual people, but really not really talking about the issues that affect each person. You see all these angst going on, whether it's Brexit over there or what we see in America here about this leadership crisis we have here. We can't get things done. I mean, look, universal healthcare, right? I mean, what kind of discussion? Who says everybody should not have access to healthy living? It's like a common sense thing. It's not accessible to everybody, right? People are underinsured, not insured, right? And they don't have a good healthy life. They become problems in society. It's not right. So these are the topics that I think that we need to have in forums like this, get a collective understanding. I believe, for example, one of the things I would like to actually explore here is a health clinic, because I don't think the health crisis in America will be solved by the government in any way, right? But I think if more of us, if the medical professionals, and volunteers, we can actually say, look, everybody has to get access to good healthcare, and the doctors who are earning a living through whatever they are, they can volunteer some time and serve the underinsured, the non-insured, right? And I think government can also give a special allowance to give medicine, like diabetes medicine or whatever it is, so that they don't become emergency crisis, which would be more expensive, right? So there's a thing they want to explore, like things like health clinic, right? So I think working on education of the individual, working on good health, creating opportunities for people to earn a dignified living, making sure that a fair day's wage for a fair day's work, right, are the things that we must revive in ourselves.
I can tell you a little bit about the Ivy League thing, because do you know what the motto of Harvard is now? It's Veritas, which means truth. Now that's shortened from what it was founded on. It was founded on a phrase called Veritas for Christ and his church. I don't remember what it is in Latin. But when it's founded, knowledge is not God in itself, right? Which is what a lot of colleges want to make it. There's a lot of academics just love learning so much. For why, right? It's not connected to anything. But when it was founded for God himself, for Christ, and for the good of his people. Because church would be the same nomenclature as like ummah. So knowledge was at one point viewed as something for the glory of God and the good of others. But then gets turned into an end in itself. People worship the academy and put education above everything for no outside purpose than education itself, rather than seeing it as a holistic point of a whole life, which is supposed to have God at the center and others that it touches.
Yeah, I think, a simple way I kind of look this is really knowledge and truth should lead us to authority. Authority cannot tell us who the truth is. You see, our quest for knowledge and our truth will lead us to what. For example, I know the Newton's laws of motion, right? I mean, I discovered that this is what happened. Apple will fall down, right? These are facts I know. Oh, and from that, this is the law, right? So those facts, the truth, kind of leads us to the authority. The gravity works, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's the same kind of thing. I think in the West here, we many times are devoid of the spiritual being. We are more focused on material being, right? There's a greater to a human being than just material existence. And in fact, life is beautiful in the spiritual realm than just the material realm.
I think, there's a lot missing. What's really interesting about that is, I think, in so much of the world we live in today, there's, whether it be science, whether it be politics, whether it be religion, you have this overriding attitude of, okay, don't ask too many questions, just trust the authority. And I think a big growth point for me in my life was when I stopped just believing what my own side told me about what other people thought, and actually going and investigating for myself.
That's right. I mean, exactly. I think that, like I said, the truth should lead us to authority.
So, obviously, is in the position you're in here, right? You have a lot of people who would, trust you as an authority, and
I'm not an authority. I'm just a servant here.
You're just a servant. That's the correct answer an authority would say. But how would you advise?
No, really. I mean, I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just like anybody else here, and trying to learn, and I learn even from this interaction from you.
So let's say you have somebody who's young, let's say they're a Muslim, because those are the people that you're having some oversight over, or this could apply to anyone. And they're afraid to ask questions because they're afraid of what the community will think or what.
No, actually, when I was young, I was encouraged. Even in the jungles of Africa, I say, ask questions. Don't take anything for granted. That was my upbringing. And that's key to humans' progress. If you look at it, let me give you an example, right? If you go to the Muslim countries, right, you will see there was sundials in mosques. And when the sundial, there's actually a nice BBC series, Science in Islam. You can look at that. There's a professor who did that too. So he says sundial comes in. So when they and the reason why they had sundials is because they want to know, is it time to pray? So they kind of plotted all these charts. When they came to, they said, look, this Greek material that has come to us doesn't kind of make sense. It says sun goes around the earth. The calculations don't add up. So they said we cannot really accept what's been handed to us. We must question it. And that actually what led to theories that okay, it's really Earth going around the sun, and Copernicus uses this work to base his theory of Earth going around the sun. So we cannot really just take what has been given to us for granted. We must really understand it and accept it as our own understanding of the truth, not somebody else's understanding of the truth.
And I think as people who believe in absolute truth, right, we believe God has actually spoken to humankind. We don't have to be afraid of asking questions.
We should not be, and God will guide us. Our faith should. You see, when young people ask me for advice, I say, "What advice do I give them?" You're going there. I said, "Look, there are really three things I would say. If you don't remember anything, remember three words I'm going to leave you. One is faith, right? We are people of faith, right? We have faith in God Almighty. We have faith in ourselves, and we have faith in our fellow human being. That God has created him in the best of the molds, just like He created me." لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. He has created you in the best of the molds. So we have faith. When we have faith in God, faith in ourselves, faith in our fellow human being, miracles are possible, as human history has quite clearly shown over the years. So first word is faith. The second is effort. We must work hard, right? We must not be in a position of regret. For example, when you send me this request to come do this interview, right? I mean, there was a lot of inertia in me. Oh, well, it's coming, it's Muharram time, I don't know how serious this guy is, I don't know what, but I said, no. I mean, he's coming in, and all I have to do is that email, and all I see is goodness, and I must try, because I don't want to be regretful that I didn't take advantage of the opportunity that came to share and to have a nice conversation, right? So effort must be there. And then, when you say effort, what do you have effort? Because, this is a realization I had when I was in college in the UK, right? I said, I'll never be in my second year in college again or first year in college again, but I'll always remember that I did work hard. So I don't want to be in a situation I didn't work hard. Effort must be there, right? And effort is now, not yesterday, because that's gone, not tomorrow, because I know I'll be here. We must do hard now, this moment here. And what do we do? What do we apply effort on? We need to apply effort on improving the human experience, advancing the human life, right? And I'm saying, faith, effort, humanity. Those are the three words, I would say, right? And I think God will help you.
Well, I think this is a really important conversation, and I'm excited to keep having it. So let's keep in touch. Let's do some dinners. Let's help more people meet each other. And
yeah, and I really appreciate this Imam Ali's thing. Come on Wednesday in Najul Balaga. It'd be good. It would be good to have you, because I think like I said, Robert inspired me. So you have a mission also here to help us rediscover our faith in different ways that we may have so far.
Well, great. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening to the Al Maida Initiative podcast. We'll see you again on the next episode.